Well, thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar, The Science of Hunger. This is the second of a four-part series exploring the science behind food. I'm Greg Berry, Assistant Director in the UAB Office of Alumni Affairs. Just a quick note, since this is a virtual event, don't be surprised if something seems out of place or a technical issue pops up. If you have any issues with your video or audio dropping or freezing, click the Reconnect button at the top of your screen. This will get you back to the webinar right away. Have you ever noticed how sometimes you eat when you're not actually hungry, or notice how all of a sudden you're hangry? I know I do. Well, tonight we're going to explore ways to recognize and respond to our hunger cues. But before we introduce tonight's guest, I'm going to go ahead and slide up a poll. Let me go ahead and get that here. On your screen, you should see the poll now. You have several options. And this question is just how often do you get hangry? You can choose from once a day, once every few days, once a week, once a month, or even never. I'm going to go ahead and keep the poll up just for a few more moments while others fill out their survey there. If you have any questions during tonight's webinar, please drop them in the chat. I'll make sure that our panel has the opportunity to answer those questions after their presentation. So here are the results of tonight's poll. We've had a lot of shifting going on. So looks like every few days, 30% of our audience gets hangry every few days, 23% once a month. It's split between daily and once a week at 19%. And 7 of you, I don't know if they're being honest or not, but they say they never, ever get hangry. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce tonight's guests. First is Dr. José Fernández. Dr. Fernández is professor and vice chair for education in the Department of Nutrition Sciences in the School of Health Professions. In 1999, he obtained his PhD in biobehavioral health from Penn State University. Dr. Fernández brought his expertise to UAB in 2001. His main research is the identification of genes that contribute to racial differences in obesity and diabetes. He's a senior scientist for the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center and Minority Health and Research Center. Next is Tara Harman, an instructor and registered dietitian nutritionist in the Department of Nutrition Sciences, also in the School of Health Professions. Tara earned her bachelor's degree in 2012, master's degree in 2014, both in foods and nutrition science, and both from East Carolina University. Tara is currently completing her PhD in health education from the School of Public Health. So it's the health education and health promotions with UAB School of Public Health while researching the effectiveness of nutrition education on improved diet quality in food insecure post-secondary students. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this webinar. I've been looking forward to this part of the series of The Science of. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to both of you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's really great to be here. We're also excited to be talking to everyone about the science of hunger and focusing on mental awareness. So how you can be more aware of your feelings in your body, in your mind, to take control of your hunger. So I'll go ahead and skip this slide because we just had a lovely introduction. Thank you again. So I want to start off tonight by talking about what is hunger, because I think that's a term that we do tend to throw around pretty often. And again, we just heard the term hangry. So what exactly does hunger mean? Well, hunger is an actual physical sensation, and it occurs when your body is feeling empty and craving food. So even if you look up the term hunger online, you will see terms like emptiness or famished. So the sensation is only experienced when your body needs food, but we often throw that term around loosely to refer to when we want something to eat, not actually if we need something to eat, like your body is telling you so. And the feeling of hunger actually comes from the brain, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, looking at some hormones that relate to hunger. So if we're not always eating because we actually feel hungry, what are some other reasons that people are typically eating? Well, something that I notice is a lot of people eat just because we feel like we should eat. So if you have a busy schedule, how often are you thinking, well, I have a few meetings back to back after this, so maybe I should grab something to eat now while I have a chance. You're not actually hungry in that moment. You're just eating because it works out with your schedule. Or what about for social occasions? When you think about what our social occasions are just in our society, they tend to revolve around food. And there's not anything wrong with that, but it just leads to us often eating when we're not actually hungry to have something to eat, but we're eating because it's a part of that experience of being with others, breaking bread together. Similarly with celebrations. I can't tell you how many times I've been to a birthday party and I've eaten birthday cake just because it's there, but I'm not actually hungry to have any of the birthday cake. And now these two, I know these are common ones for a lot of people here, I'm sure, because I hear about it from people all the time when I'm talking about nutrition and health, either because of boredom. So you're just trying to pass the time. Maybe you're watching TV and decide to have a snack while you're watching TV, or because you're feeling stressed. And food can be a source of comfort for us. So just the same way as we like to eat food for social occasions or celebrations, we might like to eat those same food enjoyments to help us feel better when we're going through stressful situations. But again, the reasons that we should be eating is considering more of the nourishment for our body. So once again, when you're feeling that true sensation of hunger and you need to feed your body with appropriate fuel to get through the rest of your day. This also relates back to if you're trying to meet specific health needs. So say if you have a certain disease state or health goals that you're trying to meet, for instance, if you have diabetes, so you have specific nutrients you need to eat to make sure you're taking care of and managing your diabetes. Or if you have some sort of any other medical condition that relates to nutrition, you need to eat to make sure that you're nourishing yourself appropriately. But again, a lot of the time we're not eating because of those specific hunger needs or because of the nutrient needs of our body. So we're often not paying attention to these crucial hormones that are what actually tells us when we're hungry and you should have something to eat. So I wanted to take a minute to go over these tonight with all of you because I think it's really important to be aware of what these are and just the fact that our body has these hunger hormones that tell us when we should be eating and when we should be stopping eating. So these two hormones are called ghrelin and leptin. And ghrelin, the way that I always remembered this one when I was in school was ghrelin, it's like grr, your stomach is rumbling. That's the hormone that tells you when you're hungry and you should have something to eat. And the way that this hormone works is when your stomach is truly empty, your body releases the hormone ghrelin, which sends signals to the brain that it's time for you to eat something. So at this point, that's when you start to recognize that it's time to look for something to fuel yourself with. And we'll talk about this again towards the end of the presentation when I'm going to introduce you all to something called the hunger scale that points out when this actually occurs. So again, ghrelin releases from your stomach being empty, telling your brain it's time to have something to eat, so you start to look for food. As you're looking for food, your body starts to have a response to prepare for food, such as your stomach rumbling, because you're releasing gastric juices and preparing your body to receive food. So often when we get to that point of hangry, like we talked about with the poll just a moment ago, is when you have your stomach rumbling, ready for something to eat. That's when you're getting to a point of a little too hungry, which again, we'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation. Now, after you've found food, consumed it, your body will start to shut down ghrelin because it recognizes that you've had enough to eat, and you start to release another hormone known as leptin. And leptin is released by the fat cells or your adipose tissue when your body recognizes that it's been satisfied and you can stop eating. But again, just from my experiences working with people, we often don't pay attention to these hormones. We're often not recognizing when ghrelin is telling us I should have something to eat and when leptin is telling us that we should stop eating, that we've had enough. And why is that? Well, just the way that our society is today, we tend to eat based off of other cues. So again, I mentioned before, things like social occasions can influence when and what you're eating. But another example would be visual eating. So I know, for example, the Clean Plate Club might be common in a lot of households. I know I grew up a member of the Clean Plate Club, and I was always very proud to be a member of the Clean Plate Club. And if you're not familiar with the Clean Plate Club, this is when you eat everything on your plate until it's clean. So I was always encouraged by my mom to eat all the food on my plate, and that's when it was okay for me to get up and leave the dinner table. But consider this. How big is your plate? So if we're actually eating just until the point of our plate being empty, are we really eating based off of our hunger, or are we just eating based off of these visual cues? So this is one thing I want you all to reflect upon tonight, is just how big are your plates? And we'll talk a little bit later on too about how we can consider reducing those to be more conscious about our portion sizes. Another way that we can easily be distracted by our hormonal cues is being distracted while eating. So a great example of this type of mindless eating is eating with the TV on. And I know a lot of us can be guilty of this. After a long day, you just want to sit down and watch a movie or a good show and enjoy your dinner. But the problem is when you're so absorbed in watching something else, it's very easy to not pay attention to when your body is telling you you're full and you've had enough to eat. And again, leptin does do that. It does tell us when we've had enough to eat. Another way we can easily miss these hormonal cues is by eating nutrient-poor foods. So nutrient-poor foods are what we call those foods with empty calories, like high in sugar and don't have a lot of vitamins, minerals, or dietary fiber, especially in it, which dietary fiber is extremely beneficial for keeping you full for long periods. So if you're eating foods that just have empty calories and are high in sugar, it's easy to just keep going on them because you don't get that sensation of fullness as quickly. And again, back to that point of feeling hangry. It's very easy to miss the hormonal cue of leptin telling you that you're full, because if you wait until you're starving to eat, your body's released so much ghrelin that it just takes a while for you to recognize that you've had enough to eat and your leptin is telling you you're full. Similarly, if you don't have any ghrelin telling you that it's time to eat, it's difficult to recognize that you're eating too much when you're not really hungry. So what's the theme of all of these examples that I'm giving about missing these hormonal cues? Well, again, the hormonal cues are something that our body is telling us. It's a signal that's coming from us. And a way that we can recognize these signals is by building and working on our mindfulness or our self-awareness. And this is where I'm very excited to pass the mic over to Dr. José Fernández, and he's going to talk to us more about this concept of mindfulness.
Thank you, Tara. And I really hope that my internet connection stays in place. I am actually in Puerto Rico, and there is a storm going over us. So hopefully it will work, and we will continue to be connected. So the whole idea of mindfulness, and I would like to start with you thinking about how did you wake up this morning, right? Waking up in the morning is a very important time and in our everyday experience, but people wake up in different ways. There are people who just wake up with an alarm and they just open their eyes and they step outside of their beds and everything is good. But there are people like me, right, who start fighting. The alarm goes off, or I open my eyes and I think, oh, I need to go to the gym. And then I said, no, maybe you should not go to the gym. Skip this morning. And then it's like, oh, you gotta get out. Maybe you want some coffee. No, just stay in bed. And it's a constant fight. Well, there was a time about 3 years ago that I realized that most working, I have been starting my day with a fight with myself. So I realized that I needed to have a new way of introduction. And I decided that I was just not going to fight. So I decided that when I will wake up, I will listen to what I want to do. I will negotiate with myself quickly, and then I will decide what to do. I will either stay in bed, skip the gym, or jump in and go and get dressed. This whole idea sounds very easy, but it requires a level of awareness that is connected to this concept that we describe as mindfulness. Mindfulness is a term that you have been listening for a while now, because it has been scientifically used to demonstrate that people who engages in practices of awareness without judgment, they tend to have better outcomes that relate to health, to pain, to eating behaviors, weight control, employee well-being, and even performance at our jobs. But what is really mindfulness? And before I jump into a definition of mindfulness, I just would like you to spend 30 seconds with me. If you dare, nobody's looking at you. I have no idea who is in this call. I cannot see your faces. So wherever you are, just sit straight, shoulders back, spine straight, good posture. Put your hands in your lap, close your eyes, and breathe. And let my voice carry you. Just breathe. This is something that you have been doing since the moment you were born. It does not require any type of thinking. It's a natural move that you do just because you are alive. And just pay attention to your breathing. Just try to feel the way your body reacts when you breathe in and the way your body feels when you breathe out. For most of us, this idea of paying attention to breathing becomes very difficult because our thoughts continue to go through our minds. And that's perfectly okay because your brain is working. So just every time you think of something, try to go back to the breathing. Pay attention to the way the air goes up through your nose, back through your throat, down through your lungs. Hold it in there and exhale slowly. Pay attention of the movements of your chest, the movements of your belly, the movement of your diaphragm. Just pay attention to it and just breathe. And if you did that and you can open your eyes now, you realize that breathing provides us a tool to be aware of our own bodies and our own sensations. That is the main concept of meditation that we're going to be talking a little bit about. But notice that when I thought of meditating before I took 2 years of mindfulness training, I became a mindfulness instructor. I thought meditation was like to have a blank brain with no thoughts, right? The whole idea of floating in the air. And that's not the way it is. It is really about awareness and constantly coming back to that place of breathing. So mindfulness is a method of mental training that allows you to be present right here, right now, without judgment. It's not about breathing right or breathing wrong. Something that I find very interesting in our students is that they say, I am doing it wrong. And I said, how wrong are you breathing? Right? I mean, we breathe as long as you are alive. That means that you are breathing. So you cannot be breathing wrong. But we immediately like to judge our behaviors. We like to label them as what is right and what is wrong. And one of the things that we do in mindfulness is that we remove that level of judgment so we can just be aware of what is happening to us right here, right now. Many people believe that mindfulness is just about meditation, but it's not. It's not limited to that. It is not a meditation school or technique. Some people ask and say, oh, do you practice this type of meditation versus this other type of meditation?
Well, Tara, do you want to pick up where we're froze there? Oh, I think you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you.
There. Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, hopefully Dr. Fernandez would be able to come back in a moment. Again, he said he has some storms going over him, so I apologize for this. But what Dr. Fernandez is explaining is how mindfulness doesn't have to be related to meditation alone. Mindfulness is a practice that you can incorporate into your everyday life. So just as we gave the last example of breathing, just building more awareness about your breath and how the air goes in and out of your body, just every breath that you're taking, that's a way to promote, mindfulness in your everyday living. So when Dr. Fernandez comes back, I'm going to let him go through these tools because he's definitely better at explaining these mindfulness concepts than I am. So I do apologize for that because he is the mindfulness consultant and not myself. But let me see where I can pick up. Okay, apologize everyone. I'm just gonna skip a couple slides ahead, and when he gets back, we'll have him go through. Oh, I hear him. There you are.
Sorry about that.
That's
Thank you.
okay.
No need for apologies. All is good.
All right. So I was okay, perfect. So what I am, let me see where I was because I became super nervous. All right. So I was saying that it is a tool that we all can have, right? And I want to give you an example. Let's say that, for example, that I give you, and when I am doing this live, right, I bring it with me. This is one of those pieces that you put together and you're supposed to twist it to release both of them, right? They locked in together and there's like a little way to do it. And when I give this to people, right, the first thing that people ask is, what is this? And then I tell them what it is, and they have to.
Well, that's the fun with virtual settings. Things happen, and can't fault Jose at all with what's going on. So let's go ahead and slide ahead a few slides, and we'll just double back towards the end.
Unmute myself, and no problem. I will just skip ahead a little bit. So our point of talking about mindfulness here is we want to teach you how to be using mindfulness in your everyday living. So we've talked about breathing a couple of times now, but again, the purpose of this talk tonight is to talk about the science of hunger. So we're talking about mindfulness as it relates to eating and practicing healthy eating habits. But you can also practice mindfulness with just talking to people, being engaged in conversations that you're having. If you feel overwhelmed with work situations, try to take a moment to take deep breaths like we did in those 30 seconds and just pay attention to how your breath feels coming in and out of your body. And that can help to really recenter you, to prepare you for focusing on whatever the task is that you have at hand. And again, I just use work as an example because I think work is one of the common generators of stressful situations. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a stressful situation for why we're incorporating mindfulness, but it seems to be one of the more beneficial situations for us to be incorporating mindfulness practices. So I'm just going to skip a little bit here. Oh, he's coming back. I'm going to go back so I don't throw off. Hi, Jose. I was just talking a little bit about how mindfulness is very important to practice into our everyday life, especially with eating, but also can be used to help handle stress in stressful situations. So please go ahead and resume with where you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara. I apologize for that again. So I was saying that, when I give this example to you of this piece that you can unlock, this brings different characteristics of the process of mindfulness. One is we need to have the mind of the beginner. We need to look at things that they happen to us for the first time. We also have to be patient with ourselves and have acceptance of what is going on. We need to trust. We need to have no judgment. And we need to really have no expectations. And you think about this, if you put this like 6 different, make a note of these different steps, and you make a note of them and you try to apply it to your life, I promise you will be a lot happier. Because a lot of the conflicts that we have with our own lives is about breaking one of those rules that I'm describing there for you. So a lot of mindfulness is about visualization. So when you close your eyes, when you feel overwhelmed, and you need a little mental break, many of us go to our happy place, right? That's when people say, like, are you paying attention? And you're like, right? Our minds go to that happy place. And visualizing what you need at a specific moment in time becomes extremely important, and becomes extremely important in the context of the science of hunger. Being hungry is a biological response. Tara explained this to you. Choosing what you eat, right? What you eat is a decision. You can be super hungry and have something that is healthy, have some vegetables and a piece of chicken, or you could be super hungry and decide to have 4 slices of pizza. So the process of visualizing, why are you going to eat it, and how are you going to feel, that visualization of where do you want to be is a mindful act that allows you to be able to make better decisions. So the reason why we talk about mindfulness in the context of the science of hunger is about being able to bring you the awareness that decision-making processes in the presence of hunger required awareness, and that awareness is connected to mindfulness, and that mindfulness is connected to what we decide to do. So this brings us to the possibility that mindfulness is not just about breathing, that awareness is something that is part of who we are in all the things that we do. So we talk about mindful walking, mindful eating, mindful bathing, mindful talking. Think about the last time you were able to experience the smell of the soap you use when you shower. Feel about the last time you were able to experience the softness of the cloth that you use where you're washing your own body. We don't pay attention to those acts because we do them automatically. And many times we do not pay attention to how we eat because we're doing it automatically. Think about all the times you have the quickest thing you can eat during lunch because you're really working during lunch. So there's a technique that I like to tell people, and it's difficult to do, right? But if you have the ability to do this, do it. It was going to take a short period of time. It's kind of fun. And it is, you close a nostril and you breathe in, and you close the other one and you breathe out. And with that one open, you go in. Close, out, in, close, out, in, close, out. And you do that. Now, try to do it without using your fingers. Try to close the nostril, right? And everybody start going like this. And then like that. But if you think about that, if you're able to pay attention to that, that brings you a tremendous amount of awareness in this fun process of breathing. Imagine if we can use that level of awareness in other aspects of our lives. Our working memory is only able to keep few simple things in at any given time. And many of our routine activities that we normally miss, this is what happens during mindfulness. We become awareness, we don't miss them anymore. At the end of the day, decision makings from the awareness perspective, they are individual. They belong to you. And many times we want to be flawless. Many times when we're doing meditation, we want to be, as I said before, have that blank mind, which is unrealistic. So we accept that we are humans and we always are going to have what I like to call this butterfly mind. So before we enter into one of those activities, into one of those practices that we do every day, before you are so stressed that you decide to have the first candy you have in front of you, before you're so stressed that the first response that you want to come out of your mouth is the most unpolite, undecent expression, before you're so stressed or so upset that you want to just react in a way that is not healthy to you, the best technique that we have is what we call stop. Stop stands for S, you stop and become aware. T, take a deep breath. O, observe your own body, how it feels, your emotions, your thoughts. P, then proceed with what I was doing. So at that moment that you have that crave of hunger, right, before you jump in without thinking, just stop. Take a breath, feel where you are, make a conscious decision, and then proceed. So I'm going to skip this, given that now I am very self-aware of the time, but I was just going to do a more extensive mindfulness break with you, right? But I just invite you to tonight, before you go to bed, take a time, take a moment to breathe in, breathe out, and become aware of the environment that surrounds you. So keep in mind that in any decision making, particularly in decision making that relates to nutrition, mindfulness is just about awareness. That living in the moment is indeed an achievable goal. It's something that we can do. You can do it. I can do it, right? It's going to give us an essence and an element of peace. It's going to help us to be aware of others, aware of the feelings and the respect of others, as well as the feelings and the respect to ourselves. It takes just practice, it takes just commitment, and do not get crazy about techniques or names or shapes or forms that can distract you. Try to be creative, try to be aware. We want to make sure you understand that when it comes to hunger, when it comes to satiety, when it comes to that biological part of ourselves, the control always goes back to you. So, Tara.
Thank you. I always love hearing you talk about mindfulness because it's always very refreshing for me too. So I was even enjoying practicing that nostril trick. I haven't done that one yet. And it feels impossible. I couldn't blow air out of just one nostril after I removed
it is very hard to do. Yeah. So,
yeah, I need to practice that more. But thank you again, Dr. Fernandez. I love learning these tips from you. So I would like to talk a little bit more now about these concepts we just learned from Dr. Fernandez about mindfulness, but connecting that again back to healthy eating. So as Dr. Fernandez was just saying, you truly are the expert of your own body. But I want you to reflect about this for just a minute. So think about the last time that you went to a doctor's appointment and you were going for some kind of medical complaint. And I'm going to use pain as an example because I think pain is an easy one to measure, but not so easy without self-awareness, I should say. But think about if you went to the doctor's office because something hurt, and when you're doing the intake appointment with the nurse or speaking to the doctor, they'll usually ask you a question like, well, how does the pain feel on a scale of 1 to 10? If this has ever happened to you before, do you find yourself stuck on, well, what is my pain? Is it, it's not a 1, it's not a 2, but I don't think it's a severe 10. Where do I fall on that spectrum? So we know that we're feeling these sensations of, again, a sensation like pain, but we're not really pinpointing exactly how it feels for us. But even your medical doctor needs that information to give you better care, because you are the best expert of your own body, because you know how you are feeling. So think of that in the same context as when we're thinking about hunger, and recognizing when we're hungry and we should have something to eat. So Dr. Fernandez's technique of the stop and reflect about the action you're about to take, that is truly a great practice that you can implement before you're about to consume your next meal. And something else I want to encourage you all to consider is to cook more meals at home. You really do build a better appreciation for the food that you're going to consume if you go through the preparation process yourself. So another example Dr. Fernandez gave was just grabbing a candy bar. And how easy is it to just grab a candy bar and scarf it down? Because it's something quick, it gives you satisfaction, you feel like you've gotten some energy, and you can move on to the next task. But if you take 30 minutes to prepare a meal, 45 minutes to prepare a meal, or say you have something cooking in the crock pot all day while you're working from home, when it comes time to actually enjoy that meal, you naturally will want to savor it and enjoy the process more because you dedicated time into the preparation of that meal. So it is something I do want you to consider as you're trying to practice more mindfulness in your day-to-day life. And another note just about general mindfulness and healthy eating, just while we're here, we give you these tips because the point of tonight is to talk about healthy eating. So just general healthy eating for a healthy lifestyle. We're not saying that your diet has to be perfect, and it doesn't mean that you can't ever have a candy bar, but just make a conscious decision each time that you're going to put food into your body, because that is nourishment. So if you're going to have a candy bar, acknowledge that you're having a candy bar and why you're having that candy bar. You don't have to completely ignore having them, but think about it before you have it and recognize, is this the best decision for you at that time? So now I want to go through some practical tips that you all can incorporate into your day-to-day life to be practicing mindfulness from a healthy eating perspective. So as you're practicing that stop technique, you can ask some questions that are food related to yourselves. So one simple one would be, am I hungry? So before you actually reach and grab for something, consider, am I actually hungry, or am I just eating because I'm stressed because of that meeting I just came from? If you are hungry, consider, how hungry are you? If you're not extremely hungry, do you really need to have a meal, or could you just have a little snack to tide you over until you get to your next meal? And then again, specific to different food decisions, ask yourself questions like, do you really want this? And I purposefully use a picture of someone eating an ice cream cone on the slide because, again, you can have things like ice cream and candy. Just ask yourself, do you really want this? Is that really the best food for you at that moment in time? Or are you making a rash decision based off of another response? Like, again, it could be a stress response, but not because you're feeling hungry. If you're hungry, think about how the food's going to make you feel. And again, try to think of something that's going to be more nourishing for you. And this is a helpful tool that you can use when trying to gauge that am I hungry concept. So this is the hunger scale, and I think it originated in the 90s. It's been a while that this has been out from MIT Medical, and a lot of people have adapted it since. But the purpose of the hunger scale is, and you can actually print this out and use this as a visual at your desk or on your refrigerator if you think it would be helpful for you recognizing your hunger cues as you're trying to practice this new practice of mindfulness into your day-to-day life. But the point of the hunger scale is to give you an idea of where you should be having something to eat and when you should be stopping eating. So you can see the scale goes from 1 to 10. 1 would be that you're starving, you're feeling like you're weak and dizzy because you are just famished. So that is that hangry feeling that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. And then the 10 on the other end of the spectrum is that you've eaten so much that you feel sick. And I feel like the 10 commonly happens when we get to the 1 point. So we get to the point where we're so hungry that we feel dizzy, and then we overindulge because we felt like we're starving. And the next thing you know, your leptin kicks in and you are so full that you feel like you're sick. But where should we be on this hunger scale? Ideally, you should be eating right at that 4 period. So when you're beginning to feel hungry, again, this is when that hormone ghrelin kicks in because your stomach is feeling empty. So it signals to the brain, it's time to get something to eat. If you're not eating right at this 4, then you're probably going to be eating at the 3, which is when you're feeling your stomach growl. And recall, that's after ghrelin has kicked in, telling the brain that you're hungry. So your brain goes and tells your stomach to prepare for food. So your stomach growling is preparing for you to put food in your body. So ideally, this is where you should be having something to eat. And then ideally, this is where you should be stopping the eating process. So when you're feeling satisfied, not necessarily full, but you're not hungry anymore. You feel like you've had just the right amount to eat, or you could feel that slight fullness feeling, or what I like that it says on this scale, a pleasantly full feeling. This is ideal because you've satisfied your body. Leptin has kicked in, that satiety hormone that tells you that you're full. You're paying attention to your natural cues, and you're not overindulging to the point where your body feels uncomfortable. Another consideration for why we don't want to overindulge is your stomach is flexible. So over time, if you're eating to this point of, say, an 8 where you're feeling stuffed, your stomach is going to continue to expand and expect that amount of food with each of your meals. So just considering overall health concerns, if anyone's trying to be conscious of their weight, it could lead to consuming more calories long term because you're consistently eating too much food long term, and you could gain weight from this. So again, I encourage you, as you're just getting used to these concepts of mindfulness and building awareness around your meal times, you might find that this hunger scale would be helpful for you to keep around to kind of help you pick up on when you should be having foods and when you should be stopping eating. Interestingly, I wanted to share this with you all. This is a survey that's done annually by the International Food Information Council. They've been collecting really interesting data actually over the past couple years since COVID, and some unique COVID-specific data. So if you have some time, just do a quick Google search and you'll find the survey, and there's some fun results on it. But what I wanted to share with you tonight is that half of Americans will stop eating when they're feeling full and listen to their hunger cues, but only half of Americans based off of these survey results. So if you're sitting here thinking, I'm definitely one of those people that waits until I'm hangry to eat, I don't pay attention to when I feel full, I just eat when food's around and it's convenient, just know that you're not alone. This is not necessarily a common practice, but it is a great practice that you can implement into your day-to-day life just to live that healthy lifestyle and to feel better in your day-to-day living too. Now, the last thing I wanted to go over with you all tonight, again, just recognizing that these concepts of mindfulness and practicing things like breathing might be new to a lot of us. And I know some people have trouble practicing things that don't feel tangible when they're just getting started with them. So I wanted to give you all some other tips that you could practice to help complement your mindfulness techniques and help to promote you building more awareness of your own body and how your body cues feel, telling you when you're hungry, telling you when you're full, to live a healthy lifestyle. The first is to exercise regularly. So if we're exercising regularly, we're supporting a healthy metabolism. And if your metabolism is functioning healthily, you're more likely to recognize those hunger and those satiety cues. Now, the basic recommendations for exercise are to be exercising 150 minutes a week. So that would be about 30 minutes, 5 days a week. But do whatever works for you. If you notice that you have more time one day, see if you can get a longer exercise period in. I know personally I was loving when last week in Birmingham, the weather was not quite as humid and terrible outside, and I was enjoying going on long walks while the weather felt like it was just a little bit cooler. So see what works best for your schedule, but do your best to try to incorporate regular exercise to help to support a healthy metabolism. My second tip for you all is to drink plenty of water. This is another way that we can get confused and eat a little bit too much food, is if you're dehydrated. Because if you're dehydrated, you feel like you're weak and you feel tired. So sometimes we can confuse that feeling of dehydration with being hungry, but you're really not hungry, you just need something to eat. So maybe if it's an odd time where you feel like you need to have a snack or some kind of pick-me-up, sit and reflect about how much water you've had that day and go refill your water bottle or go refill your glass. And I mention a water bottle because if you are going to work every day and you don't have a water bottle with you, that's the best thing you can do to make sure you're drinking enough water, is to have your own reusable water bottle with you on a day-to-day basis. So when the opportunity arises, you can easily refill it and you'll be consuming more in no time. Ideally with water, the recommendations are men should have 15 and a half cups in a day. And women should be having 11 and a half cups in a day. But of course, every person's different. So your amounts might vary compared to a friend or a family member of yours. So an easy way to figure out how much water you should be drinking is if you took your weight and divided by half, and however many ounces that is, that's a good goal for you for how much water you can have in a day. An easy example for that, I'll just say, if you are 200 pounds, divide that by 2, you would have 100 ounces of water in a day. Now again, just like exercise, do what works for you. So if you're not drinking close to that, then start small. Set reasonable goals for yourself to increase your intake over time, so it ends up being something that's sustainable to you. The third thing, earlier I mentioned our dishware, and this is something that you can practice easily at home right now if you haven't had dinner yet. When you go to serve yourself dinner, grab a smaller plate. Now I know at my house I have regular dinner plates, and then I have plates that aren't necessarily a salad plate, they're kind of an in-between. And that is what I choose to use for serving myself meals, especially dinner meals. Because after the long day, you just usually have a big appetite. But I choose that size because when we look at a plate like this one that's shown on the screen, you want to fill your plate. That's just a natural reaction for us to fill up your plate. And then it's also a natural reaction to eat until your plate is empty. It's just something that we learn to do from childhood, and we tend to keep that with us throughout our lives. But if you start with a smaller plate, you're likely to serve yourself less food. And then you can always go back for more if you're still hungry after you finish your plate and you need a little something else. But I think you'd be surprised if you start using smaller plates and having smaller portion sizes and seeing that you're actually satisfied after that meal. And I encourage you with these meal times after you finish eating to reflect about how full you feel. Do you feel like you are just satisfied, or do you feel like you're at that point of overly stuffed? And continue to challenge yourself to get to that point of feeling like you are satisfied, you are content with the meal that you just had, you feel like you're nourished, but you don't feel like you need to unbutton your pants because they're too tight now, which we've all been there. But I'm encouraging you to eat before that point. And a way that you can support yourself doing this is by chewing your food slowly and thoroughly. If you take time to slow down and chew each bite and savor the bites in your mouth so you're really tasting the meal and enjoying the meal, you will probably eat less food because you're taking more time to enjoy the meal process and recognize how your body feels during it. So it's a great time to allow your body to stop producing a lot of ghrelin, so you're no longer feeling that sensation of hunger, and start producing leptin, telling your body that you're full. What I used to always challenge people to do when I was working as a dietitian before I came to UAB, just doing nutrition consults with people, was to try to chew your food 20 times before swallowing and see how that feels. So again, if you haven't had dinner yet tonight, I encourage you to try to chew a bite 20 times and see how it feels, and try to gauge how many bites you're usually taking, or how many chews you're having for each bite usually, and how much you could expand that by. If you have already had dinner, just pocket this one for you to do for breakfast in the morning. But with these tips about healthy eating, and again, incorporating more just general mindfulness into your day-to-day living, so techniques like just breathing before your meals, we're confident that all of you can better understand your hunger and better practice mindfulness in your own day-to-day living. So I hope you all took away a lot from tonight's presentation, and thanks so much for being with us.
And thank you so much for being a part of this. We do have questions coming in. We're going to rewind all the way back to the beginning. The reasons to eat, you had a few up there. You kind of left out the joy of eating. That's definitely one reason people eat.
No, that's actually a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. And it is a reason that we should eat. I should have touched on that a little bit more, that even though we don't have to eat for a celebration, that is definitely a part of our culture in our lives. So I don't mean to say that you should go to a birthday party and not have a piece of cake, because it's someone's birthday. You should be celebrating their birthday and you should have a cake. And I'm a registered dietitian and I eat a lot of cake. I love my cake. I love my desserts, especially when it's celebrating someone. So it definitely is a reason that we should be eating. But my point in mentioning that is that we tend to focus more on those reasons, or reasons that don't relate to true hunger. And our encouragement for tonight is to focus on your hunger cues and how to acknowledge those and implement more mindfulness in your day-to-day living, so that you are really focusing on nourishing your body at least 80% of the time. If you think of that 80-20 rule, if anyone's ever heard of that, 80% of the time focus on the really good nourishment, 20% of the time is saved for the celebrations.
Do you recommend tracking macronutrients at all?
I think it depends on the person and their goals. So that's another really great question to ask. If someone was trying to achieve a certain weight loss or weight gain goal, so say you're trying to focus on muscle development, so you want to make sure you're incorporating enough protein into your day-to-day life, that can be a great practice to implement. But not every person has to count macros.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting? Sorry, Dr. Fernandez, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just was going to say that, we like to have this idea that is a one-size-fits-all approach, and something that we really try to bring to the people we work with and those we serve is that it is not. So different things work for different people, and we see it in science. I mean, you just ask about the intermittent fasting, right? Well, the intermittent fasting is great for some people, but it's not great for every person. And I think that part of being aware of the way we eat is trying to understand our body, being aware of the way our bodies respond to food. So intermittent fasting, there are people who are able to do this and their body respond beautifully. Some other people, they respond to time-restricted feeding, where they eat for 6 hours and they restrict themselves for the rest of the day. So there's a lot of individual variability. And I think that understanding what is the right approach for you, it requires awareness. And that awareness is something we need to learn to develop.
And it sounds like the entire stream tonight has been about self-awareness, knowing what your mind, what your body's kind of telling you. Any tips for stress eating? Because it's hard to stop and reflect when you're stressed.
Do you want to take that? I have some tips if you'd like me to start.
You start. Yeah, probably not the same, but you start. Yeah.
So my first tip is, when you're feeling stressed, to go back to that stop technique that Dr. Fernandez mentioned. And really simply broken down, it's just taking a break, taking a deep breath, and acknowledging how you feel. And that can even stop you before you get to the eating process. So if your natural response is to be stressed about something and go grab something to eat, you're not alone. It happens to a lot of people. But see if you can, and myself included, it happens to all of us, but see if you can stop, take a breath, acknowledge how you feel, and determine what the best thing is going to be for you. And the best way to break a habit that is more of a bad habit, one that you're not fond of, is to just change your routine in the middle. So if you feel stressed by something and you immediately go grab something that's easy to nibble on, see if instead of grabbing something that's easy to nibble on, you can grab your walking shoes and go take a walk down the street. Getting fresh air, feeling the sunshine, having a breeze on your skin, that'll make you feel so much better than stress eating will. It's just about implementing it into your day-to-day life. So practice it once, pick it up again, and next thing you know, it's going to be a new habit of yours.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the exercise. That's one of the things that I always say. Instead, not thinking about going for a workout, but just thinking about, let me just take a quick walk through the floor of where my office is. That's a good technique. Another good technique is avoid having chocolate and candy on top of your desk, because that becomes the default, the to go to, right, approach. Avoid to be doing that. And something very important, which is where the awareness and the mindfulness comes, is let's try to learn to separate eating and stress. These are two different things, right? These are two different biological responses. Let's handle stress with techniques about releasing stress, breathing, meditating, quick walk. Let's address hunger, eating as a consequence of hunger, and make decisions that are healthy decisions for us.
And I know we're up against the clock, but I've got one more question before we let you go. Does nutrient density of food affect the ghrelin-leptin balance and thus hunger?
Tara, do you want to take that?
I can jump
The
in.
answer is
yes. Okay. Sorry, for some reason I can't see the cameras anymore, so I couldn't see if you were looking at me, Jose. But it does. So what the nutrient density of food does affect is the food that you're going to eat, and then how full or hungry you're going to feel after having your food. So what I mean by that is, if you're eating empty calories, it's going to take a lot longer for your ghrelin to shut down and leptin to kick in, because you don't have anything in that sugary food that's just pretty empty, baseless calories that's going to help you to feel that sensation of fullness. But if you're consuming something that has, say, dietary fiber in it, which is known to help you fill up and feel really satiated, or something with protein, which has a high thermic effect and helps you to feel a better sensation of fullness, or healthy fats like healthy oils or avocados, any of those foods are going to help you to feel that sensation of fullness sooner. So leptin will kick in sooner and you'll stop eating. So it's very easy to overconsume empty, baseless calories, things that are high in sugar, compared to those nutrient dense foods.
So with that, Dr. Fernández, Tara, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us for tonight's webinar, especially Dr. Fernández, who's in Puerto Rico. Stay safe, and hopefully the storm has moved out of your area. And thank you for everybody to kind of hunker down and pull through it and overlook, the virtual world that we're in with the freezing and all of that. So thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Yes, thank you. This was such a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. This was fun.
You guys take care. So for those in attendance, a recording of the webinar will be available on our website tomorrow. We'll be sending that in an email to you. You can also go to our website. Be sure to join us for other webinars in our The Science of series on Tuesday, September 21st. We're going to take a look at the science of shrimp with Dr. Stephen Watts as we learn about new technologies at UAB that will not only make shrimp culture efficient, but can be used to improve human behavior. Then on Tuesday, October 12th, we'll find out more about the science of cravings, not just hunger, cravings this time, as Dr. Holly Wyatt uncovers the truth about why you crave certain foods and how you can crush those cravings. All of these webinars will be at 7 o'clock. You can register for them at alumni.uab.edu/events. You can take a look back at the first of the series, the science of broccoli and other cruciferous vegetables. Visit alumni.uab.edu/videos. There you will find out all of our past webinars, and you can take a look back at all of those. I also want to let you know about the 2021 UAB National Alumni Society annual meeting. This year's annual meeting is this Thursday night at 6. The NAS is excited to welcome UAB football coach Bill Clark as our featured guest. Hear from Coach Clark as he details his expectations on the upcoming season as the Blazers move into their new home at Protective Stadium. Very exciting. You will also get a chance to be introduced to the 2021-2022 UAB National Alumni Society Board of Directors. You can register for the annual meeting at alumni.uab.edu/annual meeting. And with football right around the corner, we invite you to tailgate with us before each regular season home game. We do have season passes for our tailgate available for $250. You can go to alumni.uab.edu/tailgate to purchase your season tailgate pass or to get more information on that. We're looking for a podcast to listen to home or maybe on your commute to and from work. Listen to UAB Green and Told. Episodes are released every other week and feature members of the UAB community. Listen in on the Apple Podcast app and Spotify, or visit alumni.uab.edu/green and told. You can stay on top of everything alumni on social media. We're found by searching UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On LinkedIn, just search UAB Alumni Career Community. And if you want more information about us at the National Alumni Society, visit alumni.uab.edu. Once again, thanks for joining us for tonight's webinar. Have a great evening, and as always, go Blazers.